when it comes to faith, I look at faith as a practical thing. As a matter of fact, and we can go as deep as you want on that. I'm not sure how much time we would have, but reason actually rests on faith. So a lot of people try to say, I don't want to, you're leaning on your faith, or, it's a blind faith, or faith is a crutch. I mean, reason actually rests in any worldview. Any worldview, reason in and of itself rests on faith.
And we have a long history together. You're sort of responsible for why I'm the person I am today. I don't know if you want that responsibility, but the good side, not the bad stuff. But anyway, man, I just wanted to allow you to start off by just sharing a little bit about your story and how you became a Christian. The topic we're going to discuss today is really the conflict I think there is between Christians and non-Christians, and sometimes even Christians and Christians within the church. And some of it, I think a lot of it is the non-essentials, if you will. A lot of the external things like when it comes around abortion and things like that. These things I don't know if will actually cause a heaven or hell discussion, but we'll discuss that. We'll kind of dive into it, but I just kind of wanted to get your journey, and so people who may not be familiar with you know how you came to the faith. Like, you was a real thug, you was a real G out there in them streets, and you came to the faith.
Hey, man, it's all uncut, and let it be known, we didn't rehearse any of this stuff.
We did. We kind of flowing, man. This is conversation me and you have all the time, and we just put it on camera.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, man. Let me just kind of first say, kudos to you, because you had talked about doing something like this for a while. Just in terms of like a podcast. Right, you know what I'm saying? And you just kind of finally put some feet to it. And so that's commendable. So I want to commend you on that.
Appreciate it.
For sure. And also having an avenue where I feel like, and I don't know everybody's situations when they do podcasts or whatever, but I know in your sense, everything's just organic, right? And I'm sure you have some questions and things that you want to formulate to kind of keep the flow going, but I know that it's all authentic, and so not to say that preparation makes you inauthentic, right? But I just like how it just kind of flows. So keep that up, man. But I grew up, for the sake of this conversation, I'll refer to many different African-American denominations as the Black Church. Okay, so it could be National Baptist Convention, or if you, African Methodist, Episcopal, whatever. I'll just refer it to the Black Church. So, but grew up in the Black Church. As a lot of blacks in the South, families deeply rooted, in Christianity or some offshoot of it, right? To some degree. And so, just middle class family, you know what I mean, doing what I do. In school we talked about stuff, we do what we do, right? So I don't really have to go into exhaustive detail. But you know what I'm saying? You do what you think is normal, right? In my mind, you live your life, do whatever you want. When you turn maybe 50 or 60, you start considering doing some maybe morally responsible stuff, right? So I pretty much played into that. Kind of this dual system, you know what I mean? I got this Sunday deal that I pop off, but then I got my real life, and so I did that, and I'm sure people listening can identify, watching can identify with that. And when I was in college, so I went to college or whatever, it's kind of weird. Right before I was pledging a fraternity, A-Phi, shout out, the forerunners there. I had an encounter with God. I'm not trying to say that, I had an open heaven vision, and I didn't, man. The Lord, he gripped my heart, and brought alive some of the different things I had heard in church. The scriptures became real to me and transformed me, right? So
that's good. That's some stuff I didn't even know. So, and I've known you for a minute. Is your parents or do they have any other religious background, or did they grow up pretty Christian? Or
no, I can say that I was probably one of the prototypical African American. I was a part of one of the prototypical African American families in the South, where it was deeply rooted. It was a part of the heritage. You know what I'm saying? I probably had an uncle or two that flirted with the Nation of Islam, but it was short-lived. One of them right now is deeply involved in church there in Little Rock. The other one might be a little bit more on the agnostic side, but not really, man. It was kind of an assumed thing that you would, go to church on Sundays, and there was no question about it. At least for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. So I kind of touched previously on the previous video about my thought process around the inability to kind of think outside of what you grew up, because it's just by being in the United States, we're a Christian nation, right? And so I think a lot of that is indoctrinated in us before we can even speak. And as a believer, there's a blessing in that. You want your child, you even christening them. A lot of people they give their child to the Lord, if you will, in a ceremonial sense, and you want to instill that in them. You want them to, as soon as they could speak, they're praying to the God we believe is the only and true God, and Jesus and things like that. But when you talk about people who struggle, or when you talk about people that kind of try to think things through and try to understand the origin of something, I think a lot of people struggle with the idea that you have such confidence in this faith that you grew up in, whereas another person in India have a different faith, and another person in Japan have a different faith, and we could go on and on and on. And so, if Kevin, if the same person, if you was born and somebody in Tokyo adopted you, and you grew up Buddhist, and that's all you've heard is Buddhism. There's a possibility, and there's cases where people have been converted from another religion in another country to the Christian faith, but we can also say that vice versa. So how do you deal with that conflict for people that kind of try to process things with their mind? I know there's a faith element, and we'll get to that, but just from a practical sense that, Kevin, it's easy for you to proclaim Jesus as your Lord and Savior because you grew up in a Christian home, even though you might have done some things that is against the faith. That was an easier religion to digest versus another. How do you respond to something like that?
Yeah, man, those are really good. That's a good point. I've had some of the stuff, and that's good, because that kind of leads me to what you want me to dive into in particular. So, man, I've had a unique journey, a very unique journey. When I became a Christian, I'm a student at the university there in Little Rock, right? So there's a representation of all types of religious worldviews. And being the kind of person that I was, even before Christ, I pretty much blended and talked to anybody. I was one of them dudes in high school where if somebody wouldn't sit with the quote unquote nerd or somebody who's rejected, I was going to go sit with them. I normally didn't follow the in crowd, and that's not to try to make myself some kind of hero, but that's just how I was, And so I always reached out to people, even if somebody wasn't talking to them or whatever it is. And so in college, so now we're talking about, being in Christ, and I'm going to answer, the doubts and stuff. So I had experienced Buddhists that I was friends with. I ate several times in the apartments on campus at that time. The dorm life was kind of lacking, so there was a few apartments or whatever. And so I went to the apartments of, hold on just a second. As a matter of fact, so I went to on several occasions, I would actually have lunch with these guys from Turkey, and they gave me my first copy of the Quran. And we would discuss differences and, some seemingly similarities there. And it just really opened me up. I was interested, you know what I'm saying? I was interested in just different worldviews, as I still am. But not for the sake of drawing my attention to be the bedrock of making sense of my human experience. No, that's in a vault for me. But there was that question of, how did all these different worldviews come about? What draws these different worldviews? What draws certain people to certain things? Because it can always seem like you can see some commonalities when you look at different beliefs, sects, if you will. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's some commonalities, which I'm sure we'll hit on. And so I got an awareness that, Christianity is not the only worldview, right? So I often thought about that, but and I don't know. We've talked about this a lot. I never thought about it from the doubting standpoint. I always looked at it from the standpoint of, let me get to understand these people, because I want to hit them with the gospel, But to answer the question, so that being to say that, I'm very aware of, several. I talk to people all the time with different worldviews, etc. But I think when it comes to faith, I look at faith as a practical thing. As a matter of fact, and we can go as deep as you want on that. I'm not sure how much time we would have, but reason actually rests on faith. So a lot of people try to say, I don't want to, you're leaning on your faith, or, it's a blind faith, or faith is a crutch. Reason actually rests in any worldview. Reason in and of itself rests.
And when you say reason,
on faith.
you mean when you say reason, because a lot of things is definition. You mean the sense of asking questions and a thorough thought process about something.
Along the lines, reason just basically you're employing the laws of logic. You're employing rational thinking to try to make sense of something and come to a conclusion about it, right? So your reasoning faculties, a lot of that rests on faith.
I guess this whole conversation for me comes around the arrogance of Christianity, and I'm a proclaimed Christian, so for those who has questions, I'm just somebody that's always thinking about the other person, because I think a lot of people feel misunderstood, feel attacked from Christians.